Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to react to rules that former presidents have to follow. Now, being president of the USA is probably, one of the hardest jobs on the planet, and it must take a real toll on you, if you manage to get 2 terms, even if you just do 1 term, because every decision that you make, has probably been attempted to have been decided before it gets to you. So these decisions are always really, really hard, often with pros and cons on each side. And, your life is not going to be normal. It's far from it, your family's life as well. So when you eventually leave office, I'm sure there's lots of restrictions and things like that. I think I read somewhere that the president of the USA, once they leave office, cannot drive a car anymore. They have to be driven. Maybe it's for safety or something like that, which is a crazy rule, isn't it? You can never drive a car again. Really, really interesting rule. So I'm quite interested to see what else makes it onto this list. Videos like this really, really fascinate me.
Just because you were once the commander-in-chief, that doesn't mean you can now do whatever you want. From driving cars to using cell phones, these are the rules that former presidents have to follow.
What?
One of the greatest perks of being president is not having to deal with traffic every day. For one thing, you've got drivers who can take you anywhere you need to go, and for another, the Secret Service can block off traffic for you to ensure your security. It's no fun for anyone else on the road, but hey, you're the president, and you have important things to do. There is a downside, though. Once a president's term is over, they can never drive a car on an open road again. The reason is because of the lifetime Secret Service detail that all ex-presidents get. After all, one of the least safe places you can be is on the road, and that's just under normal circumstances. Add in that ex-presidents are always a target, and things get even hairier. So, to ensure their safety, they're not allowed to hit the road. As George W. Bush explained to Jay Leno, he's only allowed to drive on his own private property, far from any reckless drivers or people who wish him harm. He must be driven everywhere by Secret Service agents trained in evasive and defensive driving maneuvers. The rule was instituted after John F. Kennedy's assassination in 1963. Lyndon B. Johnson was, to date, the last president to drive on public roads.
Wow. That's fascinating. So you can only ever drive on public property. Private property. If you're a real car aficionado, that's got to be quite an inconvenience. Could you drive maybe on tracks if you book a racetrack or something like that? You could probably go and drive there. Because I guess even though you can drive there, it's not the same, is it? Plus, it means that you can't really go anywhere in private anymore, just you by yourself. There's always going to be someone else who knows where you are.
President's most important duties is to be aware of any potential threats to the security of the United States. These briefings are carried out constantly throughout a president's tenure, even multiple times a day if necessary, because the world is always changing and threats can come up unexpectedly. You'd think former presidents would no longer need to be bothered about such things, since they're retired from the job and are now private citizens, but you'd be wrong. They continue to receive national security updates for the rest of their lives. Not necessarily because they're expected to actively do anything about them, but just in case they have advice they can offer the current administration, or if they get asked about the situation by the press. Even if being president isn't their job anymore, they still need constant updates about what's going on. This actually became newsworthy in 2018 when President Donald Trump allegedly threatened to revoke Barack Obama's access to national security briefings.
Why?
According to Newsweek, President Trump was rumored to be unaware that former presidents received the briefings and had to be informed that this was normal and nothing to be concerned about, though Trump later said these rumors were untrue. Whether or not it really happened, the story shined a light on just what kind of access ex-presidents have to day-to-day information about the country's security. Have you ever...
it makes sense because, to get to president, let's be honest, you are an exceptional person, and you probably have a wealth of experience, knowledge, things like that shouldn't go to waste. So you're going to have, pretty good perspectives on various things when it comes to national security. So yeah, it makes perfect sense as to why they still get these updates.
Notice that everyone who serves as president gets a library named after them when they leave office? There's a good reason for this. It's a law. The 1955 Presidential Libraries Act established that each president would oversee the creation of a library in their name. While having a library named after yourself is definitely a cool perk, Presidential libraries are a little different. They contain every non-classified word a president has written in office, even the stuff that may not be so good, such as Bill Clinton's library in Little Rock, Arkansas, which features information about his impeachment scandal. They're not allowed to keep certain materials out of their libraries, as anything created during a president's term is legally considered to be public property.
Wow.
This was decided after Richard Nixon attempted to leave out materials regarding the Watergate scandal.
I see.
The lights are off and they must be looking for a fuse box or something, because them flashlights, they're keeping me awake.
The individual presidents do have some control over how much a certain subject is featured, though. For example, George W. Bush's library in Dallas, Texas, does mention his invasion of Iraq, but instead of shying away from it, the materials on display defend his decision to go to war. We all assume that the government...
Which, you know, I don't know, like, if it was a good idea in hindsight to go there. But, you know, we can't rewrite the past.
Government is listening to everything we do these days, especially after numerous scandals have come up in the last 2 decades where the government was caught doing exactly that by surveilling U.S. citizens without a warrant. The intelligence community has since tried to clean up its image by being more transparent about this, and it now requires warrants in many situations. However, the Secret Service often gets exceptions to these rules in cases relating to the security of current and former presidents. For example, according to The Hill, the Secret Service got an exception to warrant laws regarding so-called stingray devices that can monitor the location of cell phones, with the Department of Homeland Security arguing it was impractical to require them to obtain warrants to monitor the president and other important individuals. While this particular device doesn't monitor the contents of communications passed by the phones, this is just one of many techniques that law enforcement can use for surveillance. And the Secret Service has pretty sweeping jurisdiction over keeping former presidents safe, whether that's from threatening phone calls, suspicious tweets, or anything in between. Routinely monitoring a president or former president's communications is an invasive but necessary activity the Secret Service has to undertake to ensure the security of those they are sworn to protect. Former president...
But I mean, is it unrealistic to think that a president may have a secret phone? Because, you know, knowing that, like, everything that you do on your cell phone is being monitored potentially is being monitored by several people, you've got no privacy anymore. Like, which is a massive sort of impediment on your life, really. Like, unless you're someone who doesn't really care if people watch your every move and stuff. Like, for me, knowing that someone is, like, reading all my messages and stuff, I wouldn't be happy with that. But I guess, you know, if you knew that going into the job, then you can't be angry with it, you know.
Don't have much privacy. And those snoopy Secret Service agents even get to paw through their mail. An ex-president's regular old snail mail and packages must be examined by agents before they can be delivered. That may sound like overkill, but they've caught several dangerous deliveries by doing this, even as recently as 2018. According to Bloomberg Law, the Secret Service successfully identified explosives en route to former presidents Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, among other VIP targets.
Fair enough.
And it's not just a random agent shuffling through and opening the ex-president's mail on the way back from their mailbox. It's all screened off-site by trained security staff with knowledge of dealing with explosives, dangerous chemicals, and so on. Every mail piece is meticulously examined for any possible threats to the former president. What's more, the Secret Service agents aren't the only ones keeping an eye on ex-presidential mail. The United States Postal Service also gets in on the act, as they monitor any suspicious packages sent through the mail, no matter who they're going to, through a program called Dangerous Mail Investigations, which sounds like a show that CBS will be picking up any day now.
It is my opinion that it is utter nonsense.
Every so often,
Yeah, to be fair, again, this one makes sense. It makes sense. Because, you know, first of all, like, a president's address is probably not public knowledge. So if a random parcel turns up at the door, it makes sense that the president isn't the first person to open the box, because it could be anything. Like, judging from what happened to, you know, Clinton and Obama.
You just need some alone time. People take walks, seek out a quiet room, or whatever they need to find a little peace and quiet. If this is you, becoming president might be a bad idea because you're literally never alone, and that continues even after you've left office. Secret Service detail is a 24/7 thing. And former Secret Service agent Jonathan Wackrow described presidential protection to NBC News as, quote, the most intrusive thing that anyone could ever experience. Basically, you're constantly surrounded by people you barely know, and since agents can be swapped out or moved around, ex-presidents are likely to be surrounded by strangers for the rest of their lives. And these agents don't take a break when things aren't going well, like when there are arguments between spouses. Agents are even with former presidents during holidays. Imagine not being able to eat Thanksgiving dinner without a bunch of people in black suits posted up nearby. This actually happened to Donald Trump when he was president-elect. When he and his family sat down to holiday dinner at Mar-a-Lago, more than 150 Secret Service agents were there too.
150? That is a lot. It must cost a fortune. You know, let's assume a Secret Service agent is on average, let's say what, 80 to 100 grand a year? Let's say 100 grand a year. So per week, that's 2 grand. So per day, that's about, let's say 300 bucks a day. So 150 of those, that's $45,000 for that day. Man, that's a lot of money.
Since all of his family members who were in attendance had Secret Service details of their own. Being one of the most powerful individuals in the world might seem like it would include the ability to do, well, pretty much anything you want.
Why so much McDonald's? Is that what they had for Thanksgiving?
This isn't necessarily the case. Because of that 24/7, 365-day-a-year Secret Service detail, it's hard to be spontaneous. If a regular person wants to pop down to Starbucks and get a grande French vanilla latte or whatever, they just head that way, get their coffee, and get on with their day. Due to a former president's large Secret Service detail, though, anything they want to do, even normal everyday stuff, becomes a huge undertaking. Think of something you like to do every day, like taking a walk or going out for dinner. Now imagine you have to do that thing with an entourage of strangers disrupting everyone around you for the rest of your life. For example, President Barack Obama made a Starbucks run while he was still in office, and it ended up with the Secret Service blocking off much of the street and moving pedestrians away from the president. The president even asked the Secret Service to give him a little space, just a small indicator of how frustrating constant security must be. Speaking of President Obama, he was a pretty notorious fan of playing games of pickup basketball, something he spent a lot of time doing while in private life and as a senator. Once he became president, though, the Secret Service told him that they needed 4 hours' notice before such a game, which President Obama wasn't terribly happy about, according to NBC News. So, what's a form?
Again, it's part of the game. Like, you must have known before, you decided to campaign for office, so it's just part and parcel of being president.
Former president to do if they get sick of all these rules and stipulations they have to follow? Why even be president if you don't get to spend your retirement years doing whatever you feel like, right? Well, there is a way they can get out of having to deal with all this and go back to how things were before they took office, by declining the Secret Service detail. As it turns out, this is an actual option. The Secret Service only protects those who accept the protection. If a former president or anyone else with security detail waives those protections, they're free to accept responsibility for their own safety and security, or maybe hire their own private security that might be willing to let them do more things without restrictions. Former President Richard Nixon actually did this in his later years, though the reason he gave was to save the government some money, according to the New York Times. Then, in 2017, President Trump's son, Donald Jr., willingly declined Secret Service protection, as reported by the Times, citing privacy as his reason for doing so. While the Secret Service heavily discourages protectees from choosing to do this, it's absolutely an option if a president ever wants to drive their own car again. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more grunge videos.
Really fascinating. On the last point where you can decline the Secret Service protection if you want, despite the massive intrusion on privacy, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it. Just because, I imagine it's free, first of all, and to hire a similar level of protection from that many officers will cost a fortune. And I know that presidents, they make a lot of money after their presidency via speeches, consultancy maybe. They make a lot. Books, things like that. Just based on the calculation I did on Donald Trump's protection for the Thanksgiving dinner, that was 45 grand for the day, just for the day. So over a year, we're potentially talking millions and millions of dollars. So that's number one. And number two, you know, the Secret Service, the training they must get is probably top notch. You know, they're probably ex-special forces involved, many former military men and women, so that the capability is probably superior to a lot of private contractors. And just the peace of mind, I guess, you get, you know, they're everywhere. So the chances of somebody like that wishes you like bad things getting close to you is much reduced, I would say. So yeah, despite the many concessions that you have to make in terms of your private life as a ex-president, I just think it's not worth it to say no to the Secret Service protection. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.